Okay, so I'm going to make a start. So welcome again to the Dublin Buddhist Centre online. My name's Nyana Dara, and I'm going to be teaching the course over the next 5 weeks. So the course is called A Creative Response to Uncertain Times, and I'll say a little bit more about why we called it that in a moment. What we're going to do this evening is, first of all, I'm going to give an introduction to the course and what it is that we're going to be doing on the course and how we're going to be doing it. Then we'll have an opportunity to introduce ourselves in small groups. So somebody was asking a minute ago why we chose Zoom to do the course. And that's part of the reason, because you can do little breakout groups. So we can get to know each other as well as get to know the Buddha's teaching and practices. And then we'll do a short meditation. So that'll take us up to about 8 o'clock. And we'll have a break just before 8 o'clock. For about 10 minutes. So every week there'll be a 10-minute break in the middle of the class, just to give us a break from looking into the screen and if we need a comfort break or anything. So after the break, we're going to learn the first of the two main meditations that we'll be doing on the course, and then we'll set up our home practice for the coming week. So that's the basic plan for this evening. Just a few points about Zoom. So if you're on a computer, there's two views. There's two ways of viewing. First of all, there's gallery view. And if you choose gallery view, you'll see everybody who's on the course. So I think currently there's about 80 people on the course. Or you can do speaker view, which is you'll just see the person who's speaking at that particular time, which for most of the course will be me. So those are your two options. If like I say, if you're on a computer, you can select either of those two options in the top right-hand corner of your screen. If you're on a phone or a smaller device like a tablet, you might have to swipe left or right to get the different views. And one handy little tip with Zoom, if your internet connection is bad, what you can do is you can turn your video off, and that'll mean that your sound will improve. Yeah, so you'll still be able to see me, but we won't be able to see you, but your sound will improve. So you can turn your video off if you haven't discovered that already by clicking a little video icon in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. So what I'm going to do now is just talk a little bit about the course and just to give you a sense of what we're going to do. Just before I do that, I'm just going to check that everyone's okay, everyone's getting in all right. No one's stuck in the waiting room or anything. Looks like we're okay. Yeah, so we call this course a Creative Response to Uncertain Times. So we've played with different titles. Before, the course was called Towards a Creative Response to Troubled Times. And basically what we're trying to do is just point to the fact that it's a difficult and challenging time that we're in. And that's the case for everybody to a greater or lesser extent, both here in Ireland and also around the world. So in a way, it's a unique time in human history that we're all kind of in the same boat, people all around the world. Illness and death is in your face right now. Actually, it's always there. At some point, we will get ill, as will those we love. And one thing I just keep being reminded of is that whoever you are and however healthy you are, this disease is dangerous for everyone. So at the moment, we also feel our own vulnerability as living beings, as human beings, as organisms. We're all, as human beings, susceptible to this virus. We don't quite know how it will pan out if we get it. So there's illness around, which is challenging, and there's also death around. The fact that we're going to die, the fact that loved ones will die is very much in our face. It's that kind of truth about life has been revealed to us quite strongly and quite forcibly. I'm aware of the fact that some of you might be experiencing this now. You might have people who are in hospital or people who are recovering, or indeed people who have passed away from COVID-19. So it's a challenging time. And of course, there's all the other manifold challenges that come along with the basic facts of illness, all the disruption to our economic activity, to our friendships, to our relationships, to seeing our family, to travel, to work. So many different areas have been disrupted, and that that makes us feel kind of nervous and unstable and uncertain. So I think uncertainty is a word that, or uncertain is a word that keeps cropping up at the moment. It's just an uncertain time. So that's part of the reason why we called this course a creative response to uncertain times, because the times we live in are characterized by instability. No one quite knows what's around the corner, including people who you might hope would know, people who, lead countries and so on, through no fault of their own. They're also in this very uncertain period, this very uncertain time. So yes, it's an uncertain time, it's an unstable time. And I think what that reveals is actually a truth about life, the fact that things are always relatively unstable. At the moment, things are more unstable, but things are always unstable. All things are subject to change. And that hasn't changed in the last 10 weeks since this pandemic hit Ireland. The nature of things hasn't changed. It's just been revealed to us. It's just been uncovered. And that's one of the key things I really want to get across this evening, is that things actually haven't changed. It's just that they've become more like themselves. They've been kind of uncovered. In the space of, the last 2 months or so, all of our lives have changed, and changed utterly. And what that does, that the encounter with illness, the encounter with death, the encounter with all the challenges, the encounter with uncertainty and instability, what that does is it challenges us existentially. What I mean by that is it challenges how we understand our existence, how we understand our place in the world, what we're doing here, what life is for. So it can make us feel profoundly uneasy. And again, that uneasiness, I think, according to the Buddha's teaching, is always there. We always have this vague sense of dis-ease, this vague sense that we need to find security, we need to shore things up, and we need to find something stable within the flux of change that we can attach ourselves to, and thereby find that security that we're looking for. So this seems to be, in terms of the Buddhist teaching, but in terms of just observing one's own experience, just a really, really deep need that we have in life, is to find security. So we tend to look to things, to people, to places, to arrangements, to derive that security, that sense of stability. And that's okay in itself, but because things are impermanent, because things aren't stable, because people die, because circumstances changed, it doesn't quite work. And when those changes happen, we find it deeply disturbing. We find it disturbing because we're invested in things staying the same. So I had a sort of particularly disturbing kind of moment. It was on the Saturday, the 14th of March, and it was the day that we decided that we'd have to close the Dublin Buddhist Centre. We weren't instructed to close at that point, but it became obvious that we wouldn't be able to stay open. And I went through this weekend, as I'm sure we've all had moments like this, where basically every single thing that I'd planned in my diary — I work at the Dublin Buddhist Centre full time — everything that I planned in my diary, everything that I put in my diary was just obliterated in the space of a few hours. I sent an email to everybody just to let everybody who is involved with our community here to let them know that all of our face-to-face events were cancelled. And it was interesting just to notice a force within me that was just, in a way, resistant to that, pretending that it wasn't happening, even though it manifestly was. So we're always faced with options in our lives when we encounter change. So one option is that we make existence conform with our desires. So we can make all the circumstances of our life conform to what we want them to be. So that's one way we can become happy in the face of change. The other way is if we can transform our desires so that they are in harmony with existence. So in order to meet change effectively, we've got those two options. We can make existence conform with our desires, so we get what we want when we want it, or we can transform our desires so that they are in harmony with existence. So basically, the first is impossible. We can never make life conform to the way we want it to be. That's kind of obvious when you say it like that, but we don't often live as if that's the case. We live as if we're trying to make everything conform to the way we want it to be. The second option of transforming our desires so that they are in harmony with existence is possible. And that's effectively what Buddhism is. Buddhism makes that transformation possible. We transform our desires, we transform our mind so that our desires and our and our mind, the way we are, our being is in harmony with the way things are. It's in harmony in particular with the truth of change. So if we're able to respond creatively to change when it happens, then we no longer need to find something within the flux of change which we need to attach to find security. We don't need, in a way, we become our kind of our own security, so to speak. So I've just said a little bit about what Buddhism is about. Buddhism helps us to make that transition to responding creatively to the circumstances that life throws up. I wanted to go now just to say something brief about the origins of Buddhism. So Buddhism started in northeastern India with a young man. His name was Siddhartha, and he saw these things. He saw old age and sickness. He saw instability. And interestingly, he was from a very privileged background. So many of the difficult aspects of life, he actually wouldn't have experienced himself personally. He wouldn't have experienced want or hunger or oppression. But at the same time, he seemed to have a deep insight into the undeniably unsatisfactory aspects of life. So the way that's usually talked about is in terms of an encounter with what are called the four sights. He went out from his privileged environment into the local village and saw somebody who was ill, saw somebody who was sick, saw somebody who was old, and eventually saw somebody who'd passed away, who was being carried to the burning grounds. So it's as if at that moment he saw that life was shot through with unsatisfactoriness, and that things were subject to change, that things were unstable. So he appeared to have a very, very deep appreciation of that as a young person, and that led him to seek out something which was permanent, which was stable, that wasn't subject to change. So at that time in India, there was a tradition of spiritual seekers. So this is where the fourth sight comes in. So he not only saw an old person, a sick person, and a dead person, he also saw a wandering, what were called shramanas. A shramana was like a kind of freelance wandering ascetic. And they would go around trying to find answers to the meaning of life, really, to the purpose of existence. And there was quite a tradition at that time in India of different people living in that way, with different systems of thought, different systems of practice. And this young man, Siddhartha, left his privileged life, left behind his status, left behind his family, left behind his wealth, and went forth so that he could also live in that kind of way. So he basically took a very courageous step and entered into this quest to find what he called the deathless, the state of freedom from the unsatisfactory aspects of human experience. So he wandered around India, and he left, and he basically went on a kind of spiritual quest. So just give me a second here. And eventually, I'm kind of cutting a long story very short here. Eventually, he, having entered into that spiritual quest, he transformed himself so that he was living in perfect harmony with the truth of change, with perfect harmony with the way things are. So he became what is called the awakened one. So that suggests he woke up. He woke up to the true nature of what was really going on. He realized his potential as a human being. So the word Buddha, he came to be known as the Buddha. It means the awakened one, that the one who has woken up. So that's where the word Buddha comes from. So he woke up to the way things are. And that is talked about in the tradition as being a profound freedom. So there's no inner conflict, there's no disquiet, there's no angst. So it's freedom, it's also a peace of mind, a great stillness of mind, a great profundity of tranquility. It's the ending also of greed, hatred, and delusion. So upon the attainment of enlightenment, all of our negative mental states cease. So it's also put positively in terms of consisting of wisdom, in terms of seeing things as they really are, in terms of compassion, in terms of a deep solidarity of life with other forms of life, and of energy, so an unimpeded, spontaneous, creative energy. So that's just put a little bit of content and a bit of shape on what the Buddha's experience of awakening was. So it's important that we recognise that we try to understand who the Buddha was, what kind of person he was. And it's important that we understand that, unlike some other kind of religious traditions that we might be familiar with, the Buddha wasn't a god. He wasn't the son of God or an incarnation of God or a prophet of God. What he was, you could say, is a fully developed or fully matured human being. So a Buddha basically arises, this new kind of being arises from the human state. So this is really important, because what it's telling us is that our existential situation was his existential situation. The facts of life that he encountered are the facts of life that we encounter here 2,500 years later, so that we can make that same transition that he made, because we're made of the same stuff that he was made of. So I think that's really important. It's an important current, an important thought within the Buddhist tradition, that we can attain what the Buddha attained. So what's required to begin with to make that transition is an openness to life's experiences, and an openness and a willingness to explore that experience in the light of Buddhist teachings and practices. So that, in a way, that's what is required of you, on this course, is to be open to life's experiences, and just to do some practice. I'm just going to turn the microphone off there. By the way, welcome. If you've joined us in the last few minutes, you're very welcome. I'm just basically introducing the course, giving you a bit of an overview of the course, and just talking a little bit about the Buddha and who the Buddha was, who founded this tradition that we call Buddhism. So in terms of the home practice on the course, there'll be two things to go away and practice every week. One of them will be meditation. So I'll be encouraging you to meditate every day, and you'll have one other thing to practice as well as the meditation. I'll talk about that in more detail towards the end of the evening. So the Buddha's teaching is said to be ehipasako. It's an ancient Indian word, and what it means is that the Buddha's teaching is of the nature of a personal invitation. So in other words, the Buddha teaches, the Buddha communicates the way he sees things, and then it's up to us to make of that what we will. He's not trying to force us to do things. In a way, you can only practice the Buddha's teaching out of your own volition, because you've decided that it's something that you want to try out. If it's something that you enjoy, it's something that you find helps you in your life, if the teachings seem true to you, then you can take it up. It's up to you to make that decision. Nobody else can make that decision for you. So it's kind of in that spirit that we're offering the course, that I'm offering the courses. I'm going to show you some things, talk about some things, and it's up to you to make of it what you will. So that's kind of very much part of the kind of Buddhist approach. So what I'm going to do now is just give you a brief outline of what we're going to be doing over the course of the next 5 weeks. And I'm going to be sharing a screen. So I'll be doing this from time to time in the course. That I've just got some kind of slides or flip charts, as it were, that I'm going to bring up on your screen. So if you can't see them for whatever reason, don't worry too much. I'll be talking us through it. So you should be able to see on your screen a course outline. So over the course of the 5 weeks, these are the main headings, the main things that we're going to be covering. So tonight we've already heard a little bit about the Buddha. I would have liked to have said a lot more, and we will be hearing more as the weeks go on about different aspects of the Buddha's personality and the Buddha's activities, and of course what he taught during is life. So yeah, tonight's about the Buddha, and primarily what tonight is about is learning what mindfulness is, and learning about one particular practice, which is a practice of mindfulness, which is the mindfulness of breathing. So it's a meditation. So that's the other main thing that we're going to be looking at this evening. And next week, we're going to be looking at one of the central ideas of the course, which is this notion that our mind can function in different ways. And it can function in a reactive way, or it can function in a creative way. So what we're trying to do is to move from the one to the other. And if we're able to be creative, we can develop responses to what life throws at us that are adequate to what life throws at us, that are genuine responses. So that's really the principal theme that we're going to look at next week, trying to understand what those two ways of the mind functioning are and how we can make the transition. We're also going to be connecting with inspiration and seeing the importance of that, seeing the importance of having some kind of connection with a conviction that we can grow into something more than what we are at present. So trying to explore that a little bit and see how we might bring that into operation in our own life. So that's the second week. In the third week, we're going to learn another meditation practice. It's to do with kindness. It's to do with developing that solidarity of life with life that the Buddha perfectly embodied or exemplified. And we're also going to look at on the third week the Buddhist approach to ethics. So the Buddhist approach to understanding human behavior, and how some behaviors are beneficial and some behaviors are harmful, and how we can develop the beneficial ones and reduce the harmful ones, which is in a way the principle of reactive and creative taken into the sphere of human behavior. The fourth week, we're going to be looking at meditation, particularly troubleshooting. So looking at obstacles and challenges that do arise in meditation, and how we can meet them, how we can understand what's going on, and how we can meet them creatively, as well as having a sense of the scope of meditation. So what Buddhist meditation is helping us to achieve. And also on the fourth week, we're going to be looking at developing wisdom. So developing that insight, that deep appreciation of change that the Buddha had. So not just developing a kind of an idea or developing thoughts or knowledge, but developing an actual direct perception of what's really going on. So that's the subject for the fourth week. And the fifth week, we're going to be looking at spiritual community. So what it means to be part of the Buddhist spiritual community, what that spiritual community consists of, particularly this branch of the spiritual community, the Buddhist spiritual community, which is called the Triratna Buddhist community. And we'll also look at the key role that friendship has to play in the life, the Buddhist life. So those are basically the five, an overview of the 5 weeks and the main subjects that we're going to be covering over the course of the 5 weeks. So every evening, after the evening's finished, I'll send you an email, and on the email there'll be a PDF of notes from what we've covered during the course of the evening. So I'll give you it's about 3 or 4 pages, which has got all the main points, all the things that you really need to know. It'll also have a reminder of your home practice, so what it is that you need to practice at home for the week. And there'll be a link to MP3s. So on our website, there's a page that you can go to, and you can download an MP3s, which is like a digital file that you can play on your phone or your gadget, your laptop or your computer or your tablet or whatever. And that will have a led meditation that you can use at home to help you, to support you when you're on your home practice. There's also lots of other online material that's available that you can that's on the notes. And hopefully in the next day or so, we'll also have a video of the class available on our YouTube channel, on the DBC YouTube channel. So if for whatever reason you miss a class, I know someone was emailing me just before we started, just to ask, would it be okay to miss some of the nights because she is a shift worker. So yes, so because of that, we've got these videos available so you can catch up if for whatever reason you missed the class. So we're going to introduce each other in a moment, but just before we do that, I just wanted to say just a little bit about the course in respect to the fact that it's free. So when this pandemic hit Ireland, when all this started, and when we went into the lockdown, we recognised that we had something that we thought would be of real benefit to people, both the perspectives that Buddhism has to offer in terms of just the human situation and what the significance of the human situation is, but also helpful practices that people could actually do that would help them through this difficult time. And we really wanted to make them as widely available as possible. And one of the things that we learned very quickly is that actually we've got a very small little centre. I'm actually at the Buddhist Centre now. We're in the north inner city, and it's quite a small space. But what we realised is that online we could reach a lot of people. So I think there's about 90 people in this course at the moment. We could never get 90 people in the centre. So yeah, we realised that we weren't limited by space, that we'd be able to get across to a lot of more people than we normally would be. And we thought, well, why not just make everything free of charge and run the courses on a donation basis? So we're taking a bit of a risk in a way. We are, as a lot of businesses and charities and enterprises are at the moment, in a difficult financial situation. And things are not going to get back to normal for us for quite some time. But we realize that actually a lot of people are in that situation, and a lot of in financial difficulty or in a precarious financial situation. So for that reason as well, we thought, well, let's just make everything free, and then no one's going to be unable to benefit from what we do through lack of money. So I would ask you to consider making a donation for the course. But it is completely free. So if you're not in a position to do that for whatever reason, please, by all means, just participate in the course and don't feel like you have to give something. But if you, like I say, if you are in a position to make a donation for the course, that would be really brilliant. That'll help us to basically keep doing what we're doing now and into the future. When I did this course to begin with, I think people were a little bit kind of nonplussed about that and wondering, like, well, how much should I give? So what I'm going to do is just tell you what we normally charge for a 5-week course. In a way, this is not the same because you're not here, and we can't offer the same kinds of things that we would offer. For example, we can't give you a cup of tea and a biscuit, which we normally would, but just give you a bit of a sense of what we normally charge. That can be helpful for people just to consider what they might like to give. So normally this introductory course would be €170 if you're working, or if you're waged, 135 if you're low wage, 95 if you're unwaged, and we also have an under 25 rate of €55. But having said that, I just give that as a sense of what you might like to give, but please give as much or as little as you want. So that's just a little bit about donations and so on. What we're going to do now is we're going to do some meditation. So you don't have to sit in any particular way for the meditation. Next week, what we'll do is we'll look at meditation posture and how you can sit on the floor for meditation. But what we're going to do this week is we're just going to be meditating on a chair. So just sit comfortably, and we'll make a start when you're ready. What we're going to be doing, the focus of the meditation is just going to be waking up to how things really are by simply noticing what is going on right now. So this is what mindfulness is paying attention to what's going on. That's really the simplest way of putting it. We're going to pay attention in a bit more of a specific way to what's going on in our body. Yeah, so I'll lead us through that practice for about 10 minutes. So you're just taking the time you need to sit comfortably. And relax into your surroundings. So just getting a sense of what's around you, the room that you're in, having a sense of what you're sitting on, other people in the building that you're in, other objects in the room. So just getting a sense of your overall surroundings. Noticing sound as well. So within that space, within your surroundings, there's sound. And then paying attention now to your body. So your body is seated in this particular space. And arising in the body are various sensations and experiences. So we're going to move through the body, paying attention to those different sensations and experiences. So beginning with the face. So just bringing your attention to your eyes. And allowing them to just rest back in their sockets. So with your eyes closed, you can just allow your eyeballs to rest, to sink back into their sockets. And allow the forehead to spread. Bringing some awareness to the jaw, particularly where the jaw meets the skull, which is around the ears. Feeling the tongue in your mouth warm and wet. The skin spread over your skull. So the skin under your hair. The top of the neck, where the neck joins the skull. And notice how you are holding your head on your neck. So are you poking your chin out? Is your chin tucked in? Is there a sense of the forehead poking forward, or is there a sense of uplift in the back of the skull? Having a sense of the neck, the throat. Aware now of the shoulders. So letting go of the weight of your shoulders, letting go of the weight of your arms, and just beginning to soak the body with awareness. So it's not that we're looking at our body from outside of our body, we're feeling our body from within. And just coming back each moment to the sensations arising in our body and being mindful of them. What's going on in the upper arms? Can we feel the warmth of the armpit, the muscles in the upper arm, the elbows, the lower arms? Also aware of the sensations in the hands. the left hand and the right hand. And then filling the chest with awareness, so aware of the movement of the breath and the lungs, the touch of our clothing against the skin of our chest, again the armpits, the upper back. Notice the way that we're holding our spine, that we're holding our body. Being aware of the central part of our abdomen around the base of our rib cage, our belly, our waist, our lower back, our pelvis and our buttocks. So the contact we're making with what we're sitting on. So filling that whole central part of the body with awareness. Beginning to notice how the breath moves in that part of our body. So don't worry if your mind keeps running off into thoughts and distractions about this or that. So that's natural enough. Just try and come back when you notice that you've wandered off. So coming back to the upper legs, the thighs, skin, muscle, the firmness of the bone within. Aware of the knees, the lower legs and the feet. So just getting a sense now of the whole of your body with all its different parts, with all its different sensations and experiences. Noticing the mood of your mind as well. So how do you feel in yourself? Do you feel kind of open? Do you feel constricted? Do you feel tired and low in energy, or do you feel bright and awake? Do you feel happy or do you feel sad? So just getting an overall sense of your mood, the quality, the atmosphere of your mind. And just being with whatever is there, whether it's something that you like or something you don't like. I'm going to stop talking now, and I'll just invite you to just sit just for a minute or two, just being with the totality of your experience without any particular direction or focus. And then bringing the practice to an end, just in your own way. So yes, I was talking about the Buddha earlier and how the Buddha is the awakened one. That's what his name means. That's what Buddha means. So to be awake is to be aware. So the Buddha is aware of what's going on. You could say that just very, very simply. That's what his name means. He's very aware. He's aware of what's going on. He's completely aware, you could say. So this is an awareness of the way things really are. And one of the ways that he cultivated this awareness was through meditation. So most often when you see pictures of the Buddha, he's seated in meditation. And one of the practices that he did himself, and one of the practices that he taught to other people to develop awareness, is a very, very simple practice called the mindfulness of breathing. So what mindfulness is, you could say, is doing one thing at a time. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to do one particular thing and do it as fully as possible. It's not so much that we're trying to push other things out, it's more that we're trying to become absorbed in one particular aspect of our experience. So what we need to do to practice mindfulness is to be clear about which aspect of our experience we're going to pay attention to and move that into focus and keep returning our attention to that if and when our attention wanders. So when we do the mindfulness of breathing, this particular meditation practice, our focus, as the name suggests, is our breathing. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to attend to our breathing. We're trying to be with our breathing. And it's really important that we recognize that, that the breath is in our body. It's a physical experience. It's almost like an animal experience. It's not an idea or a thought. So mindfulness is very much about, in a way, feeling what's going on, being with what's going on. Sometimes I think the word mindfulness itself is a bit deceptive because we hear the word mind, we immediately think of brain, and then we immediately think of thinking. So we think that mindfulness is about thinking about experience, but it's not really that at all. It's about being with experience. It's much more like, being in a park and looking at the wind moving through the trees than it is about sort of reading a book or analyzing something intellectually or cognitively. So it's about our breathing and the physical experience of our breathing and being with that and keeping on coming back to that if our mind wanders. So one really important thing about this practice is that we're not trying to do anything to our breathing. We're not trying to change it in any way. We're just being with it as it is, remembering that we're trying to develop this awareness of the way things are. So we're just being aware of our breathing just as it is. So again, mindfulness is about coming back to direct experience, just coming back to what's actually going on right now, which is letting go of the proliferation of thoughts that tends to go on in our brain or in our mind. So we're just keeping on coming back to what the immediate experience of breathing is. That's the basic instruction. One thing I'd say is two things I'll say is, first of all, be curious. Just be curious about what your breathing is. We kind of know what goes on, don't we? We know what happens when we breathe. We know what happens physiologically in our body. But what we're interested in when we do the practice is what it feels like. Yeah. So just be curious about that. Be curious about what it feels like to breathe, what the sensations are, what the rhythm is, what the movement is in our body, and just do it in a kindly way. So that's the other thing that's really important. So you'll probably find that your mind wanders off. So you'll start paying attention to your breathing, and then a couple of moments later, you'll notice that you're not doing that anymore. So when that happens, when you notice that you're not doing it anymore, that's actually you meditating. It's not that you've got it wrong, it's that you're actually developing awareness. So every time you notice that you've gotten distracted, you've just developed awareness. So think of it almost like a triumph rather than a failure, because that's really much more what it is. Like I say, this week we'll be meditating on a chair, but next week I'll talk about meditation posture. This practice, the mindfulness of breathing, has got a number of stages which helps us to engage with our breathing. It's actually quite difficult. It sounds really simple, and it is really simple, but it's quite difficult to do. So it's got a number of stages, the mindfulness of breathing. So I'm just going to go through what the different stages are. I'm going to share a screen again. So first of all, what we do in the first stage is we're just aware of our breathing. We're aware of the rhythm of our breathing, the movement of our breathing. And as we become aware of the rhythm, we start noticing the in-breath and the out-breath and where the transition happens between the one and the other. So at the end of the out-breath, we just drop in a little count. We breathe in and we breathe out in our natural rhythm and we say 1. We breathe in and we breathe out in our natural rhythm, we say 2. In and out, 3. In and out, 4. And so on until we've counted 10 whole cycles of breath. So what we're doing in the first stage is we're just marking the end of the out breath. So it tends to kind of emphasize the exhalation, the release, the pacification that takes place with the exhalation. In the second stage, what we do is we place the count just before the in-breath. Yes, so we count 1, we breathe in, we breathe out. We count 2, we breathe in and we breathe out. We say 3, we breathe in and we breathe out, and so on. So it's just a very subtle change. What we're doing in the second stage is by counting just before the in-breath, we accentuate the inhalation, which has a slightly different effect. It sort of energizes the mind and the body. In the third stage of the mindfulness of breathing, we just let go of the counting and we're just there with our breathing, just plain and simple. And in the fourth stage, what we do is we bring our sensations to the point at which we first feel the breath entering our body. So that's probably going to be in and around the nostrils or the mouth or maybe the nasal passages. So we pay attention to that more subtle sensation and rest our awareness there. What we'll do for a few moments before we end is we'll just sit. So we'll just sit for a period of time without trying to direct our attention anywhere. So we're literally just doing that. We're just sitting. So you don't have to remember all of that. I'll remind us as we go through. So what I'd invite you to do now is just to get into a comfortable posture, seated on your chair. And to begin with, just get a sense of your surroundings. So just get a sense of what's around you, what's around your body. And as we did before, just tuning into the different aspects of our physical experience. So first of all, notice sound. So don't worry so much about what's producing the sounds that we can hear, but just noticing the raw fact of sound. And then noticing the raw facts, so to speak, of our physical experience. The sensations in our face and our head. How does our brain feel in our head? the raw facts of the sensations in our neck and our throat, in our shoulders, our arms and our hands. Feeling the whole of the torso, so our chest, our belly, our waist, our pelvis. Notice the movement of our breathing in that whole part. So again, we're not interested in a thought about what's going on, but the actual experience of what's going on, the actual immediate sensation of it. Our legs, our knees, our lower legs, and our feet. And also having a sense of our mood, the whole emotional tone or atmosphere of our body and our mind. And then tuning into what your body does as you breathe. So you can begin by paying attention to the sensations in the abdomen. So how does your body move in your abdomen as you breathe? So again, you're not trying to change your breathing. You're trying to tune into, to notice what the body does as the breathing takes place. So as you tune into the rhythm of your breathing, tune into the inhalation and the exhalation. Noticing the qualities of the inhalation, noticing the qualities of the exhalation, particularly the quality of letting go that happens with the exhalation. So as we exhale, we can let go of anything that's bothering us, any tension that we feel in our experience, whether it's physical or emotional or both. Just enjoying that release, that letting go. And what we're going to do is just place a count at the end of the out breath. So we're going to move into the first stage of the mindfulness of breathing by introducing a count at the end of the out breath. So we breathe in and out in our own natural rhythm. Say 1. Breathe in and out in our own natural rhythm. 2. In and out 3, and so on until we've counted 10 whole cycles of breath. And any time we get distracted, we just come back to the breathing and start again at 1. So don't worry too much about getting to 10. Just engage with it as best you can. So be curious about your body. So all you need to do is just pay attention to your breathing. So enjoying the simplicity of having only one thing to do. And in the second stage, placing the count just before the in-breath. So we say 1, we breathe in, we breathe out in our natural rhythm. 2, in and out, and so on. So in this stage, we're accentuating the inhalation. Remembering to be kind in the practice. So you're doing it already as an act of kindness for yourself. You're trying to benefit yourself. So do it with that kind of spirit. Do the meditation as an act of kindness for yourself. Moving now into the third stage, letting go of the counting and just being with your breathing. The simple fact of the in-breath and the out-breath, the movement of the body, your chest, your back maybe, your belly, the sensations in your body as you breathe. So more subtle aspects of the breathing experience might begin to emerge as we deepen our attention. And don't underestimate the simple act of trying to pay attention moment by moment. If there's a lot of distress or anxiety, conflict or strain, just breathing with that. Don't push it, try and push it away, get frustrated with it. Just breathe with it. Bring it into the practice. Allow the rhythm of the breath to soothe that conflict if it's there. If you feel peaceful, just allowing that peace to deepen with each breath. If you feel enjoyment, allow that enjoyment to deepen with each breath. In the fourth stage, bringing the focus of your attention to the sensations that you feel when the breath first enters your body. And then just sitting. So letting go of directing your attention and just sitting with whatever is there without making an effort to focus. So just sitting. So bringing the meditation to a conclusion in your own time. So I just wanted to point out one of the benefits of the mindfulness of breathing. So I've talked about awareness, developing awareness. So one of the things that does when we develop awareness, it helps to unify our mind. It helps to unify the different currents in our being so that we become more whole, we become more together, we become more integrated, we become more of a complete person. So the Buddha is said to be fully and completely enlightened. So in other words, he's a whole person. There's no part of his being that's unaware or unawake. And that's suggested very strongly by the circles that surround the Buddha. So you notice in this image behind me, there's a circle around the Buddha's body and a circle around his head like an aura. And that's actually like a sphere of light around the Buddha. And what that signifies, what that expresses, is the unification of the Buddha's mind, the wholeness of the Buddha's mind. And that's something that we move towards as we practice the mindfulness of breathing and mindfulness more generally. So that's going to be our focus this week, is going to be practicing mindfulness. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time now just talking about what our practice this week is going to consist of. So first of all, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be practicing the mindfulness of breathing every day. So that's going to be the first home practice that we're going to be doing. So I've just shared a screen which has got our practice on it. So what I'm going to be encouraging you to do is to do the mindfulness of breathing every day. So what's going to be the most important support for this is to get into a routine. So routine has its own kind of momentum. So what we want to be able to do is just know that this particular part of the day, whatever part of the day that is the time of the day that when we meditate. So it might be the first thing after we get out of bed, or we might get out of bed, have a shower and then meditate, or get out of bed and have a cup of tea and then meditate. We might meditate when we get home from work. People always ask, is it better to meditate in the morning or in the evening? And I think it's easier to get into a routine in the morning. Having said that, not everybody's a morning person. So some people just aren't good at all in the morning. So you might find that you're one of those people. I have a friend who's been meditating for several decades, and it just doesn't work for him to meditate in the morning. So he doesn't do it. He does it in the evening. So it's one of the things you need to do with you're learning a new practice. You need to experiment. A lot of it's about trial and error. So what I suggest to do is actually have to consider it quite carefully when you're going to meditate. And what it'll mean, if you're going to meditate, I'm going to be encouraging you to meditate for about 20 minutes. Sorry, I just got a message there from Daniel, who's helping me out with the course. When you're, what you need to think about is like when you're going to do it. So it'll mean that if you meditate for 25 minutes, it means you won't be able to do something else that you currently do for 20 minutes. So what's that going to be? What's going to move out of the way for you to be able to meditate? Yeah. And also try and be specific, like what exact time are you going to meditate? Not roughly what time, but what exact time are you going to meditate? And yeah, someone's just asked me, that was the message they got there, is it'd be about, I recommend about 20-25 minutes. So again, on the email, there's MP3s that I'll send you. And the meditation on the MP3 is about 25 minutes, maybe slightly shorter, maybe 23 minutes. Most people can find that they can work that into their day. You also might like to do the meditation that I led there that you'll be able to do on the video if you prefer to do it that way through YouTube. It's going to be more, it's the same meditation. So you can either download the MP3 or look at the YouTube video, which I'll send you. It'll probably be tomorrow before I send you the YouTube video, because it just needs to be edited and so on. So what I'm going to do now, also the other thing is, particularly at this time when we might be cooped up inside with the people that we live with, you need to think about where you're going to meditate. So ideally you try and meditate in a place where you're not going to be interrupted, where no one's going to burst in on you, so to speak. So that's the mindfulness of breathing. So what I'll do is I'll just start talking for a couple of minutes, and I'll give you an opportunity just to reflect on, first of all, when you're going to meditate. That's the most important thing. And try and be specific about an actual time. If you work shifts, you might think about, well, how are you going to incorporate that into your shift work? Are you going to do it before you work, after you work? You might need to bear in mind your kind of energy levels and so on. But make a definite decision now about when you're going to do it. Don't leave it till later, because later you might never get to later. So seeing as we're all here, we're all thinking about it, we've just done it, try and make the decision now when you're going to meditate. And like I say, make it specific, make it 8 o'clock or 8:15 or a specific time. So I'm just going to stop talking and give you a couple of minutes just to reflect on that. So actually imagine it happening in your mind. So how's it going to happen? Where are you going to do it? What are you going to do beforehand? What are you going to do afterwards? Actually imagining it happen. Okay, so hopefully you've got a clear sense of when you're going to meditate. So the other thing for this week is to do one thing mindfully. So you can see that on your screen there. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. What we're trying to do when we're mindful, like I said earlier, is we're trying to do one thing at a time. And one thing that really helps with that is to reduce the streams of input that are coming into our senses. So we're just able to be with the immediate physical experience of what we're doing. And again, not going off into proliferation of ideas and thoughts, but coming back to immediate experience. So one thing that we're all doing an awful lot of at the moment is washing our hands. And it's actually a really, really good activity for being mindful, partly because our hands are very sensitive. We've got lots of nerve endings in our hands. So when we wash our hands, it's actually very pleasurable. And one of the things about mindfulness that I think is really important to recognize is that if we're more mindful and there's pleasure in our experience, it will be more pleasurable because there'll be more of us there having the experience that we're having. So it's really worth remembering that, because then we'll want to be mindful if we know that there's pleasure in it. So it's really good not to turn it into a kind of a worthy chore, but actually turn mindfulness as a practice into something that's really going to enrich our lives. So what I'm recommending is that we try and remember to be mindful when we wash our hands. I say try and remember because actually the hard thing about mindfulness is remembering to be mindful. That's a big part of mindfulness is actually just that. It's just remembering to be mindful. So every time we wash our hands, what we're going to do this week is, and what I'd invite you to do is just do that as mindfully as possible. Take the time that you need to do it. So we're supposed to, according to the HSE website, I looked it up, we're supposed to wash our hands for 20 seconds, which is not really that long. You might like to do it for a little bit longer if you really get into it. But actually taking that time, and often what happens when we wash our hands is I notice this myself, I kind of want to get on with the next thing. So I'm a bit impatient and just want to kind of get through it. But if you begin to pay attention to it as you're doing it, it becomes kind of intrinsically enjoyable. And then we'll feel refreshed when we get to the next thing that we're doing, rather than kind of harried or rushed. So like I say, the hard thing about washing your hands as a practice is remembering to do it. So how are you going to remember to be mindful when you wash your hands? So you might like to do something like tie a piece of string on the faucet at home where you wash your hands, or you might like to put a little post-it note on the mirror in the bathroom, or just try and think about one thing that's going to help you remember what it is that you intend to do. So again, I'll just give you a minute just to sort of reflect on that yourself. Any questions? I know a few people have put questions in the chat box, which I haven't had a chance to address. If you do have questions, please hang around at the end. I'll be here for about 10 or 15 minutes. So do please hang around. We've got a friend here from India. So Anna Kate is here from Maharashtra in India. He's got a couple of questions. I know I've also got a friend, Simone, I think he's from Germany. So hello to you. Welcome. And anyway, so we'll leave it there. So you've got your homework. We'll be here at the same time next week, the same Zoom link. And just to remind you, if you want to make a donation, I'll just put that link in the chat box now. So, oopsie, no, that's not right. So that's it. Yeah. So thanks very much, and hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing you next week. You'll get an email from me in the next short while.